Welcome back. We are in lesson 9 today, and we are going to talk about the rules for multiplication of signed numbers. It's very similar to the addition and subtraction of signed numbers. When you have two of the same sign, then they behave similarly. It's a little different in that when you have two of the same sign, the answer is always positive. Okay, that's the same rule, or a similar rule. With addition, it was if you have the same sign, you add them together and they keep the sign. With multiplication and division, let me write this out for you. With multiplication, oh goodness, I don't know what it's doing. Probably be better if I type it anyway. My handwriting is not great with this pen. So with multiplication and division, same sign equals a positive. Different signs equal negative. That's it. That's all you have to remember. Okay? So let's practice some of that. I mean, I don't know how much easier it can get. Ooh, I moved it. I didn't mean to do that. All right. So the same sign means it's positive. It's a different sign. It means it's negative. So if we have positive 3 times positive 2, we're going to get positive 6. Okay? If we have positive 3 times a negative 2, we're going to get a negative 6. If we have a negative 3 times a positive 2, we're going to get a negative 6. If we get a negative 3 times a negative 2, we're going to get a positive 6. So you can see the same sign here and here both gave you a positive result. Different signs here gave you a negative result. That's really all it is. It is very straightforward. I could give you the number line here and we could go over why that works that way. I'm not going to. This is all you need to remember. Same sign equals a positive. Different signs equal a negative. And if you have multiple factors, it works the same way, but it is always in pairs, okay? It's always in pairs. So if you had negative 3 times negative 2 times negative 1, you have a pair of negatives here. Negative 3 times negative 2 is a positive 6. Times negative 1, now the signs are different, so it's a negative 6. Okay? So you always do it in pairs, and then you compare the signs of that pair, and then you get your next number, and you do the signs in that pair. You always do it a pair at a time. You can't multiply more than 2 numbers at a time. Okay? Even if you have a list of a bunch of long numbers, it's going to be 2 at a time, 2 at a time. This one times this one times this one times this one. You're still just moving along and doing a pair at a time. You can have 5 numbers. Let's do negative 3 times negative 1 times positive 1 times positive 5 times negative 2. Okay, so here's the deal. I can tell already this is going to be a negative number. How can I tell? Because I have a pair here that's going to be positive. They'll cancel each other out. But then I'm going to have, so that'll be a positive times a positive, same sign, times a positive, same sign, times a negative, different sign. It's going to be a negative answer. So the other thing that you can say with this is if you have an odd number of negative signs, it's going to equal a negative result. Always, always, always. Because it doesn't matter what order you do it in. You could do all the negatives last. You could do all the negatives first. You're still going to end up with a negative number if you have an odd number of negatives. Because at some point, two of the negatives are going to pair together, and that last little negative is going to be by himself, and he's going to change it for everybody. You only need one negative number. One is an odd number, by the way, in order to have a negative result. Okay? So if we did this one, it's a -3 times -1, which is a +3, times +1, which is still a +3, times +15, or +3, which is a +15, times the -2, which is going to equal -30. Because positive times negative is a negative, because they're different signs. So it only takes an odd number, and an odd number is 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. You get the idea. You're skipping the even numbers. If it is indivisible by 2, it's an odd number. So if there's an odd number of negatives, the result will be negative. All right, moving on. Let's talk about inverse operations. Let me clear this page. So inverse operations. Inverse means opposite, right? It's flipped on us. So the inverse of addition, 7 plus 2, the opposite would be to subtract, right? So then that would be 7 minus 2. The opposite of addition is subtraction. That'd be 9, that'd be 5. Okay? Now, if we use the inverse sign in a problem, so if we had 7 plus 2 minus 2, we talked about this before, these two cancel each other out because they're opposites, and you're just left with the original number of 7. So inverse operations will cancel each other out when it comes to the value, if the values are the same, and it's just the inverse signs. But that is what inverse means. They're opposite and they cancel each other out. So when it comes to multiplication and division, they are inverse operations to one another. So if I were to say 7 times 2, and then I divided by 2, those are inverse operations, and that is why you can factor them out and cancel them. Because if I were to go ahead and do this, work this whole thing out, I would say 7 times 2 is 14, and I'd still have to divide by 2. Well, 14 divided by 2 is 7. Isn't that what we have up here without doing all that work? So all you have to do is look at your factors, and you know that because they're inverse operations, they're going to cancel each other out. So you can do that ahead of time and not have to do the math and then undo the math. It'll just save you some steps in the future. So when it comes to division of signed numbers, it works the same way. Let me clear this. When you have a negative number divided by a positive number, the answer is going to be negative. Different signs, okay? If you have a negative number divided by a negative number, same signs, the answer is going to be positive. All right? It is always, always, always going to be like that. If you have positives dividing by positives, +1's your answer here. If you have -6 divided by -3, +2. Same signs are always a positive result. Different signs are always a negative result. That's true for multiplication and division. And while we're at it, let's talk about the symbols for multiplication and division. You've seen me do, in just writing with my pen, a couple of different styles of multiplication. So you can say 2 times 3 equals 6. You can also say 2 times 3 equals 6. You can also say 2 times 3 equals 6. All of those mean the same thing. Now, a lot of times when I type in Jupyter Ed, you're going to see the little dot symbol. And the reason for that, the reason they use a dot in mathematics is because the x, when you start using variables, this x, if this were 2x times 3, that would start to get confusing after a while. So to eliminate that potential confusion, we switch to the dot. However, when you get a big, long problem, and there's multiple variables and multiple exponents, that can get confusing too. So they'll switch to, like, this might be 2x squared y to the 4th, right? They'll put it in parenthesis so that that little dot in between there doesn't get lost or confused with this exponent, because sometimes, believe it or not, exponents can have a decimal. Now, we're not going to cover that in Algebra 1, but it is possible when you start talking about logarithms. We're not going to do that just yet. That'll be Algebra 2. So anyway, if you see two parentheses that are next to each other, that's multiplication. If you see the dot, that's multiplication. We're going to kind of get away from using the x, because in algebra we start using variables, and this x in the middle is going to get confusing. I might still use it if we're doing some simple math without a variable in videos, but just know when you see it in Jupyter Ed, it's probably going to be the dot, and just, understand what that means. All right, moving on. Let's do a couple of little practice problems. Let's see, here we go. Let me clear the page. We have -8 divided by -2, -12 divided by -4, 6 divided by -2, -10 divided by 5. We have 6 divided by 3. We have 14 divided by -7. And we have 18 divided by 2. And then we have -9 divided by 3. So what I would like for you to do is to solve all of these. I'm going to pause the video. I want you to pause the video, solve these problems, and then press play and check your answers. It shouldn't take you very long. These are pretty easy. So pause, solve, and then come back and see if you got them all right. And now through the power of video, we see the answers. And we have, for the first problem, -8 divided by -2. They're the same sign, so the answer is a +4. -12 divided by -4, +3. +6 divided by -2 is a -3 because they're different signs. -10 divided by +5, different signs, means a -2. +3 divided by +6 divided by +3 is a +2. +14 divided by -7, that's a -2 because they're different signs. 18 divided by 2 equals 9. -9 divided by 3 equals -3. Now, if you got all of those correct, give yourself a big fat gold star on your paper. And congratulations, you completely understand the properties of dividing negatives and positives. That's all I have for lesson 9. I'll see you in lesson 10.